Hey there YouTube, welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today we're tackling the rear lower control arm on the Gambler. So this is a 2003 Acura TL Type S. And we're going to place this lower control arm here, which is kind of weird. So depending on how suspension's set up, it can be like a short arm, long arm, a McPherson strut, or a multi-link. This I think fits more in the multi-link category because there's quite a few things going on back here. So this right here looks like probably what you would call closest to an upper control arm. It's got a bushing there and an end, kind of like a tie rod end here with like a ball joint kind of situation in there. Then this one down here, this has an open control arm but a bushing in the knuckle that goes up there. That's got a bushing in the control arm itself. The one from the video where I was underneath the car checking everything out, we know that this one here, this arm, goes from here to right there, and there's a little bit of play in there. So I ordered arms, but this last arm here that goes from here to there and is like the toe adjustment and probably a little bit of camber-ish stuff too, camber caster. This might be problematic depending on how this goes, because you can kind of see this one having a bushing in both components is very similar to this one with the bushings in both components. And what I ordered that I was hoping was going to be correct was a closeout on this, and this is adjustable, which should be kind of cool, because sometimes as things wear they wind up going out of adjustment, and I don't see anything on this rear bolt to indicate that that's an alignment bolt. So if in any way, shape, or form that guy there goes way out of spec and they can't adjust things back into spec, suddenly having an adjustable arm brings in a world of opportunities. The weird part is the bushings look a little bit different, but I've already slid this one kind of in that inside frame area, so that seems like it'll fit. The only part that I'm questioning at the moment is whether or not it'll fit inside the knuckle here. But the bolt and the nut on this side, knuckle side, are both 17s. Body side though, that one's a 14, the nut's a 17, and we'll see how well these come out. Alright, so I used the air gun on this side, was able to get the bolt out. This is very similar to that front bolt that held like the U part of the strut in place, in that it's got like those ridges on it. It's in decent shape and it's kind of sticky, like maybe it had some type of like an anti-seize on it. Now for the inside one, which that one I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a gun on because it's a little tight in here. If I used a swivel I bet I could, but I'm just going to do it by hand. Alright, so this definitely would have been way easier had I put a swivel on the socket and then just use the gun. But on the bright side, I didn't need the wrench. So that nut on the back side is welded on and part of the rear subframe. So all you really needed is a 14mm to pull this bolt out. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Come on. Oh, might need to get the pry bar to get this guy loose. There we go. And then I kind of wiggled the new part in. That's all in place there, so that should work good. This part here fits up inside too, so this should be pretty good. I've got this bolt down here through both holes. You can kind of see there's a little bit of play still in it, so this won't be exacting, but it'll be pretty close enough that I should be able to take it to a alignment shop. They should be able to get it closer, And you can see we got a ways to go before this is long enough. So if I suck that back in, pretty good ways. Now, the way this should work is that as this turns, it should either lengthen or shorten the rod. So this should be the lengthening way. And you can see there's threads showing here now and threads showing there. And we're getting pretty close. So that might be close enough there. That's pretty close there. So again, with as loose as the bushings are, it's not going to be exacting. And then with the bushings being worn, there's no idea of what it should have been originally. But once we get it installed, and once it's on an alignment rack, they should be able to align this properly. And then these screw down here and snug up against that right there. And that's what actually locks it in place. Alright, so I screwed that out as far as I can get it, so it's as long as it'll get before it falls off, and it fell off this end first. So now I've got it lined back up. You can see it can get a fair amount larger than the original rod was. So that's all in place. And then the big thing is that you want to make sure that you got this good and snugged up. So you want to make sure that's good and tight, which that is. And you want to make sure it's good and tight on both ends, so both the one here and the one closer to the knuckle. Now, when we look at the old piece, I think this is the part that was in the knuckle, and this is a little bit more of like a spherical bearing kind of situation, and it's got a little bit of a side-to-side play. So it's definitely one of those things where it's like, we're going to lose a little bit of ease of maneuverability, I guess, because the spherical bearings allow a lot of really easy movement left and right without fighting it, while the other end that was in the body was more or less an old rubber bushing. So just a rubber bushing style. Doesn't give a lot of movement, doesn't gotta give a lot of give. And then we've been lucky all day until we got to this one. So the passenger side came right out, no problem. Driver's side, the knuckle side bolt came right out, no problem. Body side bolt, that sucker's fighting. So hit it with another shot, a PB blaster, just to be safe. And then also went over and got the impact swivel and a shorter socket to try and get this off. Now I can turn it a little bit by hand, but I mean it's barely moving by hand. There's a lot of force I'm applying to that ratchet, which means there's a good chance that that bolt is seized up inside that bushing. I'm pretty sure that sucker's stuck. So watch as I turn the socket, how much that bushing turns. Pretty much a 1-to-1. Oh. So there's a couple choices I got here. I can try putting heat to it. The gas tank's right there though. Also known as right there. So it's possible, but I don't know if I really want to. Otherwise, it's possible a little bit more time with the PB blaster might free that up just a little bit. But worst comes to worst, maybe this might be a job for a Sawzall. Alright. So, a little bit more PB blaster, a little bit more working of this. And I'm getting it so that the bolt's turning easier. And I think it's slipping inside the bushing. So you can kind of see the bushing. Oops. Oh. So you can see the bushing starts to turn, slips, and keeps coming back. So this sucker's slowly working loose. Slowly coming out. The big thing's going to be whether or not I'm able to get it all the way out. But it's definitely going to take some time, because every time it like pops like that, I think it's jumping and breaking loose. But man, it's not easy. And I'm still doing this by hand. So I use this to try and work it forward and back, forward and back, forward and back real quick to try and get some good impacts in there. And what happens is that the way this works is that it's got like little hammers that hit on this and drive it to turn, but it doesn't always hit. And because it's not a constant amount of force in the turning, it allows it to bounce back a little bit. So because it's able to bounce back, when something's caught in a bushing, it's not a great tool for trying to take it loose, but it's really super handy to be able to flip forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward, and hammer it to try and like either work fluid in there with the PB blaster, or to try and break the rust loose on it. So working this out has all been by hand, and you can see it's a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears. There we go. So you can kind of see this bolt was probably stuck in there with this really shiny spot. So that was probably rust that was directly bonded to the inside of that bushing and stuff. And then there's more rust here. There's not a lot of room with the gas tank being right there in order to get anything in there to drive it back, to hammer it through. So a little bit of a pain in the butt, but at least that one's out. Now for the arm. So spherical bearing end is the end that's in here. So you can see really nice, easy movement there. But with that spherical bearing being bad and allowing that play in the wheel. So yeah, this has a pretty good side to side. So in and out movement. Meanwhile, that's just a standard bushing. You can see the rust. So sometimes these are a fight, sometimes they're not that bad. Real quick, we'll take a look at the bolts. This one here, you can see still has a lot of that rust proofing coating stuff on it. You can see a little bit of rust and stuff forming up here, but otherwise it's in pretty decent shape. So this is just going to get like a little teeny tiny bit of the silver grade anti-seize. This, on the other hand, this is going to get a copious amount of anti-seize, because you can just make out kind of in that little shoulder area there that little bit of shiny bit of that rust proof coating. So kind of one of those situations where this one's going to need it. And then I'm just going to coat the shank body here, this solid section here. I don't need to coat the threads. So coating it on the threads could reduce its ability to hold a torque and stuff. So even though that passenger side was kind of a pain in the butt, everything worked out in the end. And one of the big things is that anytime you replace components such as this, so that rear control arm, even the front control arm, the vehicle's going to need aligned. And because I've done stuff in both the front and the rear, it's going to need a four-wheel alignment, which can be a little bit more pricey. It can require that the alignment shop's got maybe a little bit better equipment. You can do it yourself with, like, you know, levels and brooms and angle finder indicator dealy things and tape measures. But I do highly recommend going to a shop and having it done, and one that you trust. Because now that your components aren't shaken, depending on how they do the alignment, that can really put a shake or a pinch in the suspension, and that can greatly affect tire wear as well as fuel economy. So getting a good alignment is very important. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll check you next time.